thank you for coming down to Trade Tech. It's SunGard, of course, a regular face. Everyone knows quite well who you are, but what has brought you down here today?
Well, thank you very much. What brought us today? We were bringing to market our front-to-back solutions on special flavor emerging markets, pan-European fragmentation, and especially a very client-driven initiative around regulatory changes and adaptation for technology.
Well, that's something I actually quite wanted to pick up on. You said you're looking at emerging markets a lot more strongly than in the past, perhaps.
Emerging markets has always been a big part of our proposal. I think today, ever more than before, probably we have more inquiries from more clients to get connected to ever more places, whether it's Central and Eastern Europe, whether it's Latin America, China, Southeast Asia. These are all big stories for us.
Okay, if we did look at Europe in particular for a moment, obviously a lot of these regulations are very Europe focused, and everyone talks about the major financial centres in Europe, but not so much maybe about the emerging markets. How are things like MiFID II and EMIR and Basel III, etc., going to impact on the emerging markets?
I think basically some of these markets, it's kind of difficult because it depends on which markets you're talking about. Some of these markets are in the European Union, so they respond to the same regulatory calls as other countries in the European Union. If we take a slightly different approach and we think about, historically we're used to having a number of financial centers in Europe, the city, London in the United Kingdom, but Madrid, Paris, Geneva, not European Union per se. What's interesting to look at is the attempts at a number of different places to create secondary financial centers. There are big efforts on the way in Warsaw, in Moscow, in Istanbul, for each of these financial centers to become real, or potential alternatives, and to create for themselves a market for their own local and companies to list and to come and find buyers and sellers. But it's interesting to see that we are probably going to live in a much more multipolar world in the next few years with the emergence of new places.
And it's an interesting thing with this world of increasing globalization and increasing fragmentation, particularly with these regulations, that it seems we're getting more and more away from this idea of financial centers as we have before. Do you think there'll be a point where there will no longer be one massive financial center, or it'll actually be more divided up quite equally across the whole of the European Union, in fact the globe?
I'm not entirely certain. I mean, if you look at, historically London has provided a number of services around capital markets and, legal services, tax and fiscal advisory services, and I don't think all of these financial centers are looking at replicating. I think what you may end up is having strong centers of excellence, and I think London will always remain a very, very strong center for the financial markets, the capital markets as a whole in Europe. But I think what you may have is a number of different initiatives in Turkey, in Poland, in Russia, for people to start creating for themselves a financial sector which allows the local companies to no longer need to go and list themselves elsewhere, but to be able to find a local alternative to finding a place to list, a place to raise funds, a place to finance their credit requirements.
So, in a more general sense, how do you see the overall market structure picture changing over the next, say, 2 or 3 years?
I think in a way what we've seen over the last couple of years with strong regulatory drivers, MiFID, but the emergence of a fragmentation of not only the liquidity, but a fragmentation of response of people to liquidity, where you see exchanges that or MTS that try to look specifically at niche areas, specifically the retail market, specifically building something around block trading. I think we will see probably more of this in more asset classes. I don't think fragmentation is going to go away. We may have an attempt at defragmentation with takeovers between exchanges, MTFs, dark pools, OTFs. But I don't think the world is going to get more. It will get more complex before it gets anywhere more simple.
Well, thank you very much for taking time to speak with us. It's been fascinating, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
Merci.